There's a strange double standard we rarely question. When someone says they belong to a cult, we panic. We worry about them. We think of brainwashing, isolation, and danger. But when someone says they belong to a religion, we nod in polite acceptance. We might even admire their commitment. The difference in how we treat these words is massive. But is the difference real or just cosmetic? The truth is, cults and religions are far more similar than people like to admit. And often, the only real distinction is age. Time gives belief systems legitimacy. Beliefs don't need to change. Practices don't need to soften. They just need to last. And the longer they last, the less we question them. When we step back, we begin to see that most religions started off as cults. Strange, small, and deeply suspicious. They just happened to stick around long enough to gain followers, buildings, holidays, and political power. Take a look at any cult leader. Most are treated like gods by their followers. They're revered, quoted, and obeyed. Their words carry divine weight. Now, take a look at any religion's founder. Same behavior. The only difference is that the religious leader usually lived centuries ago, which gives them a layer of mystique and untouchability. But they operated the same way. A charismatic figure convinces people that they have access to some higher truth. They present themselves as chosen, special, and beyond human. They use isolation, repetition, and fear of the outside world to maintain control. These aren't just the tactics of modern cults. They're the foundation of most major religions. Cults start small, which is why we fear them. It's easier to spot the manipulation when it's happening in someone's backyard. But when that same manipulation is happening in a cathedral or a temple, we call it tradition. It's the same formula. Convince people that truth is exclusive, that salvation is conditional, and that obedience is moral. Cults push these ideas aggressively. Religions just have better PR. The early days of Christianity were seen as a dangerous cult by the Roman Empire. Early followers met in secret, practiced rituals that outsiders didn't understand, and believed in visions, prophecies, and miracles. They rejected local traditions and followed a charismatic figure who claimed to be the Son of God. If that were happening today, we'd call it a cult, but because it happened 2,000 years ago, we call it faith. The same applies to nearly every world religion: Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism. All of them began with a small group of devoted followers believing in something that most of the world thought was absurd. Over time, those beliefs became institutionalized. They gained political allies, built structures, and developed rules. And what was once fringe became mainstream. What was once cultish became sacred. But the psychological mechanics stayed the same. If you look at what cults actually do to control people, you start to notice the overlap. Cults isolate their members from outside influence. So do religions. Cults discourage questioning and frame doubt as weakness. So do religions. Cults promise meaning, identity, and purpose in exchange for loyalty. Religions do that too. Cults create a worldview where insiders are saved and outsiders are dangerous. Religions thrive on that exact framework. It's not a coincidence. It's the same machinery running on a different timeline. Think of how language is used in cults. Phrases like the truth, the path, the light, or gods will become shields against logic. They stop conversations and frame criticism as a sin. Religions mastered that game a long time ago. They have centuries of practice in labeling doubt as evil. They've built entire systems where questioning isn't just frowned upon. It's punishable. When that happens, truth becomes irrelevant. What matters is loyalty. What matters is obedience. And obedience, when unquestioned, becomes holy. We often think of cults as more extreme because they haven't yet polished their image. But even that's just a matter of time. Give any cult a few centuries, a few holy texts, a few wars, and they'll look a lot like a religion. They'll have sacred holidays, symbols, songs, and scriptures. They'll build institutions, write laws, influence governments, and have schools, charities, and missionaries. And just like that, the word cult disappears, not because anything fundamentally changed, but because society gave it a makeover. There are cults right now that people laugh at. We call them absurd and mock their leaders. We wonder how anyone could be so gullible. But that's exactly what people thought about early Christians, early Muslims, early Mormons, and early Buddhists. They were ridiculed, persecuted, and even executed. And then they grew, not because they were more true, but because they were more organized, because they adapted, and because they spread faster than they could be destroyed. Some cults die out, others evolve into religions. That's the pattern. It has nothing to do with truth or enlightenment. It has everything to do with numbers and structure. Beliefs don't become more logical as they age. They just become more common. And we're conditioned to treat common things as normal. But repetition isn't evidence. And popularity isn't proof. It just feels safer to believe what everyone else believes. That's how belief systems survive. Think of the Heaven's Gate cult. People believed their leader was the Son of God, and that a spaceship was coming to take them to salvation. They wore matching clothes, cut themselves off from society, and had rituals and sacred texts. Sound familiar? If you changed the spaceship to a chariot of fire, a winged horse, or a cloud in the sky, it wouldn't be so different from the religious stories that billions believe in today. The problem isn't that Heaven's Gate was too crazy. The problem is that we've normalized the craziness of older beliefs. Time is the biggest marketing strategy for religion. With time comes respectability and tradition, but beneath the robes, incense, stained glass, and ancient texts, the same psychological hooks are in place: fear, hope, shame, belonging, guilt, reward, and punishment. These are not divine tools. They are human ones. They're emotional levers that get pulled again and again because they work. Cult leaders pull them to build control. Religious leaders pull them to maintain it. You don't have to look far to see how religion protects itself like a cult. Try asking uncomfortable questions. Try leaving your religion and see how people react. Try talking about inconsistencies, contradictions, or scientific conflicts. Often what you'll face isn't open discussion. It's silence, disapproval, or outright rejection. That's cult behavior. That's how emotional control works. It doesn't need to be physical chains. Social chains work just as well. Many religious people are good, kind, and honest. But that doesn't mean the systems they're part of are harmless. Good people can exist inside bad ideas. And that's what makes it harder to question. It's easier to spot harm when it looks like abuse. It's harder when it looks like love. But both cults and religions use love as a way to secure loyalty. Love for the leader. Love for the group. Love for the faith. It becomes a trap you don't want to escape. Even when the walls close in, power is another connection point. Cults are obsessed with it. So are religions. Cults usually crash when their leaders try to expand too fast. Religions learn to go slow. They build hierarchies, learn politics, and write rules that look moral on the surface, but are designed to protect power. Women were silenced, doubters were punished, and outsiders were demonized. All of it was framed as divine wisdom. But power needs belief to function, and belief, when enforced, becomes domination. You'll rarely hear a cult say, "Don't ask questions." Instead, they'll say, "All the answers are already here." That's exactly what religious texts claim. Everything has already been revealed. All you have to do is follow. Don't search. Don't doubt. Just obey. That's not freedom. That's not truth-seeking. That's submission. And submission, when rebranded as virtue, keeps people locked in. The danger in these systems isn't always obvious. That's part of their design. They don't need to be violent to be harmful. A belief system can appear peaceful on the outside and still cause deep psychological damage. It can claim to offer peace while feeding people fear. Fear of hell. Fear of punishment. Fear of being wrong. Fear of thinking for yourself. These are not accidental side effects. They're core features, because fear is easier to control than reason. When you study cult survivors, you hear the same patterns over and over. People say they felt chosen, special, part of something bigger. Then the demands increased. The guilt started, and the group became their entire world. They were told to cut off friends, family, anyone who questioned the truth. This didn't happen because they were weak. It happened because the system was designed to feel safe at first. That's how manipulation works. It hides inside comfort. Religions use the same psychology. They offer answers before you even know the questions. They offer identity before you've formed your own. They tell you who you are, what you should want, what's good, what's evil, who to trust, and who to avoid. And the earlier you're exposed to this, the deeper it takes root. That's why so many religions focus on children. It's easier to program belief when there's no resistance yet. It's not a coincidence that most people die in the same religion they were born into. It's not a choice. It's conditioning. Cults often revolve around end times, thinking, apocalyptic visions, and urgency. The world is ending. Act now. Religion does the same. The concept of Judgment Day, eternal punishment, the rapture, or paradise all push people to think emotionally, not logically. When fear is high, critical thinking drops. And when you're convinced that time is running out, you stop asking questions. Urgency is one of the most effective tools for shutting down doubt. What cults do openly, religions often do subtly. But the result is the same. Obedience becomes morality, loyalty becomes virtue, and questioning becomes a sin. Over time, cults evolve. The ones that survive get better at PR. They clean up their language, soften their image, and start schools, build hospitals, make documentaries, and write children's books. They learn to blend in. That's what religions did. What we call faith today was once radical extremism. The only reason we accept it now is because it's been repeated for so long that it feels normal. But normal doesn't mean harmless, and repetition doesn't make something true. Religious apologists will often say, but look at all the good religion has done. That's like saying a cult that feeds its members can't be dangerous. Good deeds don't cancel out harmful ideas. A system that produces both charity and violence is not automatically good. And even when religion inspires kindness, it often does so conditionally. Love your neighbor if they believe. Forgive others if they repent. Help the poor so you can earn salvation. That's not unconditional kindness. That's transactional morality. Another argument people make is that religion gives people hope. But so do cults. Hope is not exclusive to truth. Hope can be manufactured. And false hope can be addictive. When that hope is tied to obedience, it becomes a leash. People stay loyal not because they're free, but because they're afraid to lose their sense of meaning. That's not faith. That's dependency. It's not hard to understand why people join cults. They're usually looking for connection, purpose, or answers. They want to feel less alone and guided. Religion offers the same thing. That's why it works. It's not because of miracles or truth. It's because it speaks to emotional needs. When those needs are strong enough, people will believe almost anything. They'll rearrange their whole worldview just to feel safe. The difference between a cult and a religion is not in the structure, but in the scale. Cults are religions that haven't spread yet. Religions are cults that succeeded. That's it. It's not about content. It's about acceptance. If enough people believe it, it stops being weird. It stops being questioned. It becomes sacred. That's not because of divine truth. That's because of social reinforcement. We trust the crowd more than our own doubt. Many modern religions still have cult-like branches, fundamentalist offshoots, isolated communities, groups that practice extreme obedience, dress codes, gender roles, and punishments. These aren't deviations. They're reminders of where the religion came from. When stripped of legal restrictions or public scrutiny, religions often return to their roots: control, fear, and exclusion. That's not a bug. That's the original code. Look at how religious leaders talk. The language is filled with absolutes: always, never, right, wrong, pure, sinful. This black and white thinking is a classic cult strategy. It simplifies the world, removes nuance, and when people stop seeing grey, they stop thinking critically. They stop noticing contradictions. They just obey. And obedience, when framed as righteousness, becomes addictive. You might think that religion has evolved past cult behavior, but ask yourself this: would you trust a new religion that started today and claimed everything older religions do? Would you believe a man who said he talked to God in the desert? Would you join a group that followed ancient dietary rules, dress codes, and punishment rituals? If not, why accept it just because it's older? We don't give new cults the same benefit of the doubt because we haven't had time to normalize them. That's the only reason. It's not about logic or evidence. It's about repetition. And repetition makes even the strangest ideas feel familiar. That's how beliefs spread. Not because they make sense, but because they've been told enough times. You don't need to be in a cult to be controlled. And you don't need to be religious to see the similarities. Control doesn't always wear a robe. Sometimes it wears a smile. Sometimes it quotes scripture. Sometimes it sings songs of peace while punishing disobedience. That's how systems survive. They disguise control as love, fear as reverence, and submission as holiness. The scariest part is that once these systems are in place, people will defend them, not because they're brainwashed, but because they've tied their entire identity to the belief. They've built their friendships, families, traditions, and memories around it. Letting go feels like death. So, they hold on. Even when they feel trapped. Even when the questions won't go away. They hold on because the alternative feels like falling. But real freedom isn't about feeling comfortable. It's about thinking clearly, asking the questions that make you uneasy, and walking away when something no longer makes sense. It's about recognizing when love is being used as a leash, when truth is being used as a trap, and when hope is being used as a drug. The line between cult and religion is thinner than we think. In many cases, it's not a line at all. It's a timeline. One just hasn't grown up yet, and the other has grown so big we've forgotten how strange it really is. But the tactics are the same. The tools are the same. The psychology is the same. And if we don't question it, we'll keep falling for it over and over again.